This is Bradley Benner with Semantic Mastery. This is SM webinars or Semantic Mastery webinars today with somebody that should not need any introduction, but I'm going to anyways. Jeremy Noltzman from Press Advantage, co-owner and the developer. And we've been doing webinars with Jeremy forever. So again, probably don't need much of an introduction, but Jeremy, I'm sure you're going to be introducing yourself to a degree anyway. So
I will. Yep.
With that said, I want to apologize, guys, because I set this up. This is the first time we're doing a hosted webinar via Google Meet since I made that change a couple of months ago. And so I configured this improperly. This was not supposed to be set up as a Google meeting for everybody else. It was just supposed to be a meeting for Jeremy and I, and it was supposed to stream to YouTube for all of you guys. So it's going to be a little bit of a mess in here today. And so for that reason, I ask everybody to please mute yourself, turn your camera off unless you want to be seen for some reason. You know, some people just want to be seen. I see you. But anyways, regardless, we're gonna get into it. I'm gonna let Jeremy take over, and I'm gonna shut up until I have questions. How about that, Jeremy?
Sounds good to me. But you know, you can just jump in whenever you want to. So
right on, man.
All right, let me share out my screen here.
And if anybody wants to watch it on YouTube instead, which is where we're supposed to be, actually, I'm going to put the link in chat. And that's actually how it's supposed to be. So,
can you verify that you could see my screen there, Bradley?
I'm sorry. Can I what?
Can you see my screen there?
Yes, sir. I can
all right,
see
cool. Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us today. As Bradley said, this is the latest of many. I always enjoy coming to talk to the Semantic Mastery folks and do my little unscheduled appearances in the mastermind sessions as well. So if you're not in the mastermind, you should join just so you can talk to me, right? You know, all kidding aside, I do really enjoy talking to everybody here. This year, we're doing something a little bit different. We took some time at the beginning of the year and we did a deep dive into a ton of our data, looking at how people use press releases, what kind of results they're getting, tangible results like the real stuff, not, you know, kind of, you know, whatever you might make up or, you know, pick up anecdotally and stuff like that. So we did a real deep dive into, you know, over 3,000 brands, and we tracked those results across over 14,000 keywords using both old school search as well as AI search. And we really just wanted to kind of verify the things that we had been seeing anecdotally, the stuff that folks like Bradley had been telling me about, and really to be able to put real numbers behind it. And then once we did that, what we found was really interesting. And so I made it even deeper by going and doing a ton of extensive research into what other people have said about AI visibility and AI search and what works and what doesn't and all that stuff. So I've got all kinds of third-party studies from, you know, just websites and other products like, you know, SEMrush or Ahrefs or something like that. But there's also a bunch of academic studies in here as well. So this presentation is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be very data-driven. I am going to gloss over where the data comes from, but every slide that has data will have a little source thing at the bottom where you can kind of track down to where it came from. So what we're going to do first off is I'm going to just kind of tease the study, talk a little bit about how we did it. I'm going to jump into some case studies because everybody wonders, hey, do press releases work? And instead of kind of throwing case studies throughout, I figured I'm just going to throw the case studies at the beginning. We're going to see what kind of results that you can get. These are real case studies from real customers of mine, and you know, of course, most of them are representing their client brands. Then we'll dive into, you know, a little bit of background about AI search and how AI works, so that we're kind of all talking from the same foundation. And we'll talk about some of the shifts in how customers behave and things like that. Then we'll dive into kind of what I call the three-layer, you know, the three-layer pattern of, you know, capturing a prospect for our clients from they don't know about the client to they're on the phone with your client ready to do business with them. And then of course at the end we'll talk a little bit about Press Advantage for those of you who are already customers and missed our internal webinar a couple weeks back. We've got some new stuff that we'll talk about. I've got a little class I want to tease, and then at the very end, because I leave this stuff for the very end, we will have a pitch. Of course, there's a pitch. It is something you guys have seen before, but it is the last time you will ever see it. So, kind of pay attention for that. with no further ado, let's just kind of move on. So this is our overall study methodology. Again, over 3,000 real businesses. These are real clients that our customers are running press releases for. We tracked both branded search, but also over 14,000 different money keywords to see what was happening for both Google, for local, map pack style rankings, as well as across the different AI platforms. And we really focused on 4 primary AI platforms: ChatGPT, Gemini, Google's AI Mode, and Perplexity. And there's some interesting stuff to talk about that here in a couple minutes. And then we ran this study in 2 waves because we wanted to kind of track and make sure that stuff was tracking. So we ran it about almost 3 months apart, about 2.5 months apart. We did, when it comes to local, we did over 7,500 best service in city style searches across those 4 engines to really track and see where people were showing up in organic search and why that's important. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. Let's hop into a couple of these case studies, right? And these are just with press releases. This is actually kind of just a pure PR play. One client went from almost bankrupt to sold out a real estate development. There was 130 homes on the lot, or not on the lot, but in this development. And they almost went out of business, but they ran some PR campaigns and managed to sell all of them within a couple of years, and have secured kind of that $150 million phase 2 as well. Those of you who have done any sort of development or are unfamiliar with development know how hard that is. So that's a really incredible result. A mortgage company went from $7 million to $250 million in underwriting within 6 months. And then another client, this was a medical clinic. They went kind of an urgent care type clinic. They went from brand new to full capacity with no paid advertising, just using press releases in 90 days. This one I really found was really interesting. It was a domain that was heavily penalized, and they ran a lot of press releases, upwards of 10 a month, sometimes 15 a month. So this is a big difference in my normal recommendations as far as how many to run, but they managed to recover all of their penalties and showed up pretty well in ChatGPT and Perplexity in the space of a year. So that was a pretty awesome result. This is actually one of our customers, a marketing agency like you guys. They hit 78% of last year's sales through ChatGPT within the first part of the year, and they are attributing that primarily to the press releases and driving organic traffic through through both ChatGPT and Google search. Another AI related one, this one for a client in 90 days, they almost they increase their traffic through ChatGPT by 42%. No paid media, just press releases. Again, very, very similar here. They went from a 3 to 20% share of voice. We'll talk about what that is in a little bit, across all 4 platforms in 3 months using 40 releases total. So again, another high volume because it was in a high competitive space in consumer rental, kind of a direct to consumer type of approach. And then my favorite is one press release for a local HVAC company, #1 in ChatGPT and Gemini for some of their money keywords in days, and they got 32 new customers that they're saying that they're going to net just on that early, kind of initial sale, initial relationship, about $1,000, a pop. So one press release netted 32,000 in profit, not revenue, profit to this local business. So this stuff really does work, guys. This is not my numbers. These are things that my customers and their clients are sharing with us. Now, about me, like Bradley said, I've been around you guys quite a bit for many years. I own and operate Press Advantage and a couple of other businesses, and I'm not this guru type or anything like that. I just kind of hop on and we talk, and I tell you what I think, I tell you what I've learned, I tell you what I see, I tell you what what I think you should consider, and we'll take it from there. And of course, like I said, there's always an offer attached, but I don't do the guru style pitching or anything like that. It's, I'm pretty down to earth guy. That's a picture off of my back porch. I live in the middle of nowhere in Missouri on a farm. I've got 5 kids, in my early 50s. I got 3 grandkids. Life's great, but I'm always happy to come and talk to you guys. No AI hype here. I know if you guys have spent any amount of time on social media, whether it's X or Facebook or anywhere else, all you see is all these the hype train about this model and that model and this tool and that tool, and we're not going to talk about that here because I don't play that game. I'm only going to talk about things that I know work, things that I have hard data behind. If we sat down over a cup of coffee or over dinner, then we could certainly talk about all the hype all we want, but in a setting like this, I'm just going to tell you what works. And along those lines comes a little bit of a mea culpa. A couple years back, I was talking about how I thought this AI stuff was going to play out. And my prediction was that Google was going to lose a significant chunk of market share. And that was based on the fact that they completely bombed when it came to rolling out AI. And all of the other players were doing significantly better. And I didn't think they were going to go away or anything, but I did think that it was going to significantly impact their share of search. Unfortunately for me, fortunately for Google, I was wrong. Their search share did not decline in any significant way, just a little bit. And they continue to own 90% of overall search. Again, this is all backed by real data, and some of the sources that are not on there are things like Google and their claims and stuff like that. And you can see that 9% of search comes from from the other search engines, and only about half a percent of Google's overall volume is made up of AI search. So there's a lot of room for growth for AI search because it is incremental. It's not impacting Google search in a negative way, but it is building on top of Google search. And so as time goes on, the AI search layers or surfaces are going to be more and more prevalent. They're going to be pushed on us from all sides, and so we're going to see that share of overall search go up and up. For Google, they are getting the lion's share of that as well. So if we look at just kind of overall citation counts, we see 60% of that is still being generated by Google's AI mode compared to 40% across some of the other platforms. Interestingly, half of America uses chatbots today. This is a little higher than I expected it to be. And in the last couple of years, it's gone from a third to half. And we can imagine that this is just going to keep going up until it's probably closer to 80 to 90% within the next couple of years. ChatGPT use has more than doubled since 2023. So you can see they went from 18% of adults use ChatGPT to almost half of adults use ChatGPT. And you'll notice that those numbers of who uses ChatGPT and who uses chatbots is very similar. And that's because 90% of people who use any kind of chatbot use ChatGPT. Of that, half of America that uses chatbots, half of them also use Gemini. I think that's probably, folks that have Android phones, because I don't know a lot of people that actually go and use Gemini explicitly as part of their day-to-day, but I could be wrong. Copilot usage obviously loops very tightly in with ChatGPT. And sadly for me, because Claude is my favorite, Claude is way down at 12%. Not very many people use Claude as a chatbot. Grok is also kind of down there, although I expect Grok to continue to grow as xAI continues to invest heavily in infrastructure around Grok.
Yeah, and that might seem odd because in our little corner of the web, everybody uses Claude, so it seems like that would be the prevalent model, but it's by far not.
Yep. And Pew Research is a pretty good source for that. So I'm inclined to trust the numbers that they came up with there. So as far as usage goes, we talked about this a little bit earlier. The usage continues to skyrocket. Last year they did about 250 million AI searches a month, and they're doing over 1.1 billion searches every month, including 900 million people using ChatGPT every week. Those are some crazy numbers if you think about kind of slow down and think about that. So ChatGPT is definitely something to focus on. I'm going to jump back here to this slide for a minute because I want you guys to really think about this for a minute. When we are looking at AI visibility, it's really easy to say we need to be in ChatGPT, we need to be in Claude, we need to be in Perplexity, we need to be here, we need to be there. Really, All we need to do is we need to be in Google's AI platforms, and we need to be in OpenAI's AI platforms. So we need to be in ChatGPT, and we need to be in Gemini/AI mode. Those are the two surfaces that matter. The rest of them, vanity. They're nice to have. It's nice to say, hey, you're a fan of Perplexity, but you'll note what is completely missing from here is Perplexity. It doesn't even make the cut, which I found, a little surprising, because I personally know people that use it. But, we have to go where the usage is, and that usage is with Google, and it's with OpenAI. And so as we are talking to our clients, we need to make sure that they understand that, this is why we're focusing on these two platforms. This is why we're so focused on Google. This is why we're focused on, AI rankings in ChatGPT, and because that's where the actual people are. It's nice to say, hey, Grok recommended me, or hey, Claude recommended me. But if we're putting in a lot of effort to get there, our money's going to be much, much better spent focusing on the surfaces that actually matter. All right, back to the script. AI now answers, over 20%, close to 25% of AI searches. And that's across whether it's AI mode or AI overviews and stuff like that. I feel like this number is actually a little bit low when you include AI overviews, because we feel like AI overviews have kind of taken over the world. But I'm assuming, again, that Pew and SEMrush kind of know what they're doing, and that these numbers are relatively legit. So it's something to kind of keep in mind. There's a lot of room to grow here, and I fully expect AI answers to be a core part of every search moving forward within, really the near future. Any day I feel like Google in particular could flip the bit and turn AI mode to be a first class landing point instead of a classic SERPs page, especially for your money or life type of spaces. Now, let's talk a little bit about the buyer's journey, because it's important as agency owners that we understand how our clients get money. How does a prospect go from not even knowing who our client is to picking up the phone and calling our client ready to buy? And the reason why we need to understand it is because they probably don't understand the whole process, and we need to educate them, because we then need to tell them, this is why you spend money on this step and this step and this step, because that's where your clients are coming from. And if you don't, then these prospects have a hard time, even finding your client, let alone picking up the phone and calling them. And that is really kind of just a couple stages here. First, they have a need, right? They need the roof repaired. Then they have to discover somebody who's going to help them, and today we've always leaned on the Map Pack, and now we've got a lot of AI, but discovery can take a lot of other forms. Discovery can be direct mailers. It can be, door hangers. It can be, a friend of mine says, oh, this other guy over here, they did my roof and it was great. So you're going to have lots of different ways of discovery. The ones that we want to focus on are Map Pack and AI. And then, of course, if you're listening to Bradley in the mastermind at all, that secret weapon of direct mail really helps out a lot. And it helps not just with discovery, but also with branding. And we'll talk about why branding is important in a minute. What the prospect does once they have a couple of providers in mind is then they research them. They look them up. They put the company name in Google, and they look to see, what's going on. What are people saying? All that stuff. And then they'll either not pick up the phone at all, or they'll pick up the phone and call you. Warm phone call, not cold, because now they're kind of educated. They understand your brand. They understand, what you do, maybe a little bit about how you price and things like that. And then that's what converts, into money for the client. So again, there's kind of two main stages here that we want to focus on. We want to focus on discovery, because we need people to find out about our client. And then we need to focus on the investigation side of things. Is kind of like reputation management almost, and brand management, all these old school terms that people kind of forget about. This is actually more and more important every day. And we'll talk about, why in just a second. But these are the two stages that we can control, that we have a lot of influence in. When it comes to discovery, obviously Map Pack on the left, right? We all know how to do Map Pack. That's kind of, part and parcel to what we do. What's emerging and continuing to grow quickly is discovery through AI chat, where we say, who's the best roofer in Dallas? And it's going to come back with a handful of recommendations. And obviously we want our client to be in the recommendation list, ideally at the top. And even better, we want our client to control how much, what that response reads like as well. What are the recommendations around the mentioned brands in there, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of complexity that goes into that AI answer, but what we really want to focus on is getting our clients mentioned by brand name in there because of what happens next. Now, the prospect, when they do that investigation, they're going to put the brand in. They're going to look and see what comes up. They're going to ignore the top couple listings because they know that's their website. They're a little biased. That's their Facebook page. They're a little biased, and so on and so forth. 97% of prospects will look at your third-party related information first. So they skip right past all that fancy marketing that you wrote up, and they look at what other people are saying. And that's the lion's share of what they're going to build their opinion on, because they know that everything can be gamed. AI is really kind of no different. If there's missing information, we'll talk about this a little bit later as to kind of the details, but if there's missing information, it'll literally make stuff up and it will put stuff in. So if you don't give AI tools a lot of brand collateral, a lot of brand information in multiple different places, and you just kind of let it be and have it happen however it happens, whatever Google happens to give to ChatGPT or to AI mode, then it's going to hallucinate. It's going to make stuff up. It's going to pick stuff up from competitors, and that's not what you want. So you want to have that strong brand with confident messaging, clear value props, accurate information is really important, and that way you're going to own that branded answer when AI comes to share what it knows about your brand with that consumer. This was interesting for me as well. The timeline that this happens, it's almost always within 3 or 4 days of discovery, they make that decision on who to go with. And 72% is within a month, but literally almost all of that 72% happens within the first 3 days. Almost half of it starts at a search engine, so there's a lot of non-search discovery that goes on. But almost all of them are checking multiple sites, doing brand search, and the things that we've talked about. Now, realistically, what this looks like, and I'm going to put this kind of more into press advantage kind of terms, is the buyer doesn't know who to call. You've already used our press releases to dominate the map pack, and so AI search is going to name your client because you've got a lot of you've done a lot of that work as well, and we'll talk about how to do that in a little bit. And then once that buyer looks up the brand, then they hit all the brand proof that you've already placed using the press releases and other mechanisms, and they then convert. Now, most of your competition, they don't have any idea that this is going on. They're still living in the world where map pack is the only thing that matters. They aren't really looking at, hey, how does how does this discovery thing work? What's changing? They're the ones that are just kind of stuck behind the 8 ball. And so this is an excellent opportunity for those of you who are paying attention and recognize that patterns are shifting, consumer behavior is shifting, and that's what drives money to our clients, which lets them actually pay us, which is kind of important. This gives us an opportunity not just to enhance what we offer to our clients, but also to educate them, to explain to them, because if they don't know, then they're not going to spend more money with you. But if they know that, hey, if I go and do this work, then it's going to end up with X amount of dollars in my pocket, they're going to pay you money to do that. So let's talk a little bit about how AI search works. Everybody talks about LLM this and LLM that. It's a pet peeve of mine. The LLM is the underlying model. It is a large language model. It is the piece that runs everything else. Call it the engine, if you will. Everything else, all the apps and tools that we interact with are built on top of the LLM. So AI search is AI assistants like ChatGPT or Claude or anything like that, OpenClaw, all these things. These are all built on top of LLMs. And then, of course, any application that leverages AI is also built on top of LLMs, and many of them are built on top of multiple LLMs at the same time. So a lot of people just use LLM as an interchangeable term for everything. I find that to be a little problematic because what matters for AI search, it will be profoundly different from what matters from, say, an OpenClaw based, AI assistant. And so you have to understand that if you want to be able to, impact, all the different ways that the clients or the prospects will find your client. Another common one is a citation and a mention. So a citation is just, a link to something that your client put out. It could be a press release, it could be a page on their homepage, it could be a social. All it is hey, this piece of content was used to create this answer. And then a mention is the brand mention of your client or you, whatever, in the actual AI answer. And if we look at this completely contrived, thing that, I don't know why, or actually I do know why it put Dallas and Des Moines in the same thing, because I gave it an example that included both of them. But you can see the yellow underlined, they're known for reliable service and have expanded recently. That's kind of a source that's linked, it got that from a press release, say. And then the company name, that's obviously a mention, right? So it's important to have both, because you won't get mentions without citations, but the more citations you have, the more you control the answer. So it all matches together, and there's all very, very important. So, don't think that, oh, I'm never being mentioned if you're dominating the citation board, because that means that you're really controlling what is in the answer itself, which really helps a lot with educational type answers and things like that, where people are asking questions. Now, AI search has 4 primary steps. This is overly simplified. I am not going to go into detail here. If you want to go into detail, get on a call with me and we can, nerd out about this until the cows come home. But, the training data is what's built into the large language model. The large language model does not need to go out to retrieve any information that is in the training data. However, if you want more current information, or it's the tool that you're using is built to bring in current information, it's going to do what we call a retrieval. And you may have heard of like the query fan out and other similar terms. Those are just kind of means to retrieve data. And so that's what this step is just going out and getting all the information that the AI tool thinks is relevant to whatever you asked it. And then it goes to step 3, which is re-ranking, and it looks at all the data that it got back and it analyzes it at a high level and says, these sources look authoritative, this all looks relevant, and then it's going to score it all, and it's going to pick the top 10, 15, 20 of these results, and it's going to use them for step 4, which is creating the answer. So again, very high level, but these are the important things to remember. Is you have the underlying training data, then you have additional data that it's getting from search engines, and then it has an internal algorithm to re-rank what it has, and then it generates the answer based on all of that. Now, what a query fanout kind of looks like is, and these are not real terms, this is just kind of random stuff, but if someone asks for the best roofer in Dallas, that AI tool is going to blast that out into 5, 10, 20, sometimes 25 different subqueries. These are long tail keywords. These are things that are super relevant to whatever question you asked, and they can be really kind of weird and esoteric too. And then it takes all of that back and it turns it into one single answer. And so what that means is we cannot focus on just the old school money keywords anymore. We have to be present, and our clients have to be present in all of these long tail keywords, because again, we'll talk about the math and how this works a little bit later, but that's how, if we can show up across more of these query fanout queries, our clients are going to perform better in AI search. One of my favorite slides is press coverage. AI loves press coverage. For those of you who are already a customer and are using our authority network, you have seen this in practice, where AI is loving all of the press releases that you send out. Across the board, according to Muck Rack, 25% of AI answers are driven by news coverage. And we see this in our data as well. So this is kind of cool. And I've seen on more than one occasion, the best roofer in town is blah, blah, blah. And the linked citation for that is a press release that we published. So that's pretty cool. So there's 2 of these 4 steps that you can really impact with PR, and really any form of content, but obviously we're here to talk about PR because PR has some natural authority attached to it, and we can control the volume of it. The training stuff is long-term, right? That takes a while. It can take a year or more for our information to show up in the training corpus, because the model companies, they only retrain these models, once in a while. So we've seen how, the different models roll out, GPT-5, GPT-5.5, Opus 5.8 now, Fable and Mythos are all the rage and all that. All of these, will come with training updates, but it takes a long time for that to enter into things. On the flip side, we can control retrieval a lot better, because retrieval is what we're basically force feeding into the SERPs. And when the AI tools do their grounding searches, whether it's with Google or Bing or Brave Search or whatever search engine they're using for that, we want our press releases and all of our other content to to surface for that, so we can kind of force feed all of this into the pipeline. Now, let's start diving into discovery and research in a little bit more detail. First, we have local discovery. This is kind of the classic. Those of you who were with me last year, you saw these slides before, but I'm just going to go over them so you can see what impact press releases have on MapPak. These map grids are blended across 4 to 5 money keywords. Those keywords do not include any brand search. On the flip side, the PR campaigns that ran this was exclusively PR. There was no other marketing done, and the only strategy was our brand type of anchors. So this was 100% focused on building brand, and you can see we went from kind of the low end to middle of the top 10 to solidly in the top 3. This guy went from nowhere to touching on on page 1. This one went from kind of mediocre to bottom of 10 to squarely in the middle of top 4. And this is in Oakland, California. This is not like small town USA or something like that. So the answer to the question is, do press releases work and does brand matter for local search, is right here. And the answer to both questions is yes. But we're going to gloss over local discovery because we all know how to do that anyways. And if you don't, that's what the mastermind's for. Now let's talk about kind of the brand search. Now, one of the first things that we are seeing all over the internet is, hey, there's this traffic is just collapsing. Nobody's clicking through, and AI, nobody clicks through from AI and stuff like that. Well, this is an academic study that just came out this year, and augmented by some resources from Pew Research, and it shows that yes, there's only a 1% or so click through from an AI answer to a client, but they pick up, they write it down, they remember it, and then they go and they Google the brand, and then they land on your site that way. And so you're almost kind of bypassing a lot of your top of funnel traffic and things like that, because they do the discovery, and then they investigate just by typing the brand in. Again, academic research, not mine. Pew is not necessarily academic, but they're obviously a big research folks. And so when you hear people talking about, oh, it's terrible, the nobody's clicking through and stuff like that, look for brand search. Are you getting branded click-throughs? Has that gone up? Because if you have a good, strong brand, that brand search and those branded click-throughs are going to go up, and that's what you want to see, because that shows you that you're getting a lot more of that traffic through than you did before. Now, mentioned this before, 2/3 of prospects research the brand. They check their reputation and brand credibility with brand search. Bright Local, thank you, Bright Local, said that the most common way that those prospects are looking for information about a brand is local news, press releases, local news coverage, whole 9 yards. This was very surprising to me. I figured more people would be after like Instagram and TikTok and social media and stuff like that, but you can see the numbers there in the gray. YouTube was only 34% in 2025. Now, again, this is not exclusive, right? So, just because 40% doesn't mean that, oh, those people didn't look on YouTube or Instagram as well. They very well may have, and probably did, because they're looking at multiple places. But what that also tells you is, where else should you be putting that branded content? Well, you should be putting it on YouTube. You should be putting it on Instagram. You should be putting it on TikTok and all the other social platforms and everywhere you can possibly find it. So get that, good hardcore branded content out there. This should be table stakes for everybody in the room. The days of doing keyword, specific, SEO has been gone and buried and unburied and, buried again, for years. We've long since moved into an entity and brand focused, scenario, but people don't understand that. And I still to this day see people using our platform with long tail keywords as anchors and things like that. And it's like, stop doing that, guys. You're going to actually damage your brand, because you're going to over optimize for certain concepts, and you can actually delist your brand for this, for the stuff that matters, by forcing it to forcing Google to kind of put it in a different bucket. So we want to be very, very careful. Don't need to go into a lot of detail there. There's plenty of that in the mastermind, and you know, you guys have heard Bradley talk about all of this, you know, at length. But that strong brand, of course, helps across the board. We've talked about that. But then, you know, when Google got in trouble, they started releasing some algorithmic stuff about that through some of the legal stuff and some other leaks and things like that. And we know for a fact now that the stronger your brand is, the better it's going to perform across the board in aggregate search. When it comes to AI, a strong brand gets 10 times the number of mentions that a weak brand will. Why that is, don't know. But, you know, this is it came out of a study that Ahrefs did. In that same study, they also tested brand mentions versus brand links. This one was a little surprising to me, that the difference was so stark. We do see brand links getting cited a lot, but you know, the mention rate to me, where it's 3 to 1 in favor of just regular old brand mentions. I knew brand mentions were important. This is the first time I had any real data around it. And it definitely matches. Evertune had a study out that confirmed this information. What this means for you is when you can place content, even if there's no backlink to your client, if you can place branded content out there on social, on parasite outlets, even if it's in some news article somewhere that is just an aside mention of the client brand, do it. Because that stuff matters. It gets tracked. It gets, you know, it impacts the mention rate, and you know, that's at the end of the day, that mention rate is what feeds the discovery. And we talked about this a little bit before. We did do some additional testing, and these guys did a lot of testing across all kinds of different models, and every single model out there will hallucinate data to fill in where there's gaps around a brand footprint. So make sure that you have lots of deep data in multiple places, not just press releases, but in multiple places, talking about the brand, everything that they do, everything that you want them to be known for, anything that a customer might use to find them, you know, informational content, FAQs, prices, all of that. It's got to be out there in as much public, you know, setting as possible. Strong brands, again, you know, get named, get cited 3 times more, or get mentioned 3 times more often than if they're just used. You know, this kind of, again, Semrush, another academic study mentioned this. So it's you're kind of getting a little bit of a dead horse thing going on here. Brand is really, really important, guys. It drives SEO, you know, regular organic SEO. It drives AI results. It drives AI visibility, and all of these are critically important. And then a strong brand takes that cold prospect for your client and turns them into a warm prospect that's going to pick up the phone and call. If you do not fill in the gaps in the SERPs, whether it's branded SERPs or things like you know, keyword searches and stuff like that, if you don't fill those in by putting out more content on third parties, you know, press releases, you know, parasites, whole 9 yards. If you don't do that, then other third-party sources that you don't control will fill in those gaps, and we don't want that, because ultimately what we really want to do is we want to control the message that the AI answer gives back, and we can't always control what's going to show up on a BBB profile or on Yelp reviews or anything like that. So we want to be very careful that, you know, we can control as much as possible of that brand search in particular, and so that we can control the message that prospect gets back. When it comes to our PRs, they do really, really good if you follow my guidance. The best practices that I've been pitching for literally, you know, 3-4 years now, you know, they deliver some massive results. We see, my favorite one is a brand search where you can go 12 pages deep in the brand search and you're still finding press releases. And if you look at, you know, what Google's AI mode has to say about that brand, 80, 90, some, you know, occasionally even 100% of the sources cited are press releases. And, you know, it's when you control the message like that, you know, again, we go back to, you know, the AI tools, they take the information from the content it has, and if we're force feeding that content, the message gets built, you know, the answer gets built with our message. The distribution platform matters. Our old school network, the legacy network, which is kind of similar to what you get from other providers, not very good citation rates, not very good placements in the top 30 of SERPs, whereas you get an almost 5x lift if you're using our authority network. And I will mention that this is these numbers include all of the people who, despite my begging and pleading, do not use our best practices. So they're kind of dragging the numbers down. Again, if you're using our best practices, you're going to see numbers upwards of 75 to 80% here. It works across industries. Again, this is our specific placement. You will, of course, see a lower citation and mention rate in your money or life type of verticals because there's just fewer AI answers and AI overviews there. But it's very uniform that we see good placement across any industry that you might be working with. Volume matters. I've always said 2 a month, and this is why. Now I have hard data behind it. If you're only using 1 a quarter, which is what, surprisingly, which was a very common number for our customers, you're getting less than an 8% citation rate, as opposed to going to 2 a month and you're going to have a 63.5%. You'll note that going to 4 a month doesn't get you all that much more, and that's because after 2 a month, it's almost like a stair step. There is no delay to when these things show up. When you send out a press release, it shows up in Google's AI within a day, sometimes even faster than that. And so you just start. So there's no real ramp up. We're kind of when we're just using it for map pack and stuff like that, we're used to depending on a kind of a ramp up where it takes 3-4 months to start seeing movement in the map pack. When it comes to AI visibility, press releases show up almost immediately. Like I said, after 2 months, you start getting into the straight line performance. We didn't test, run numbers above 6 a month because we just didn't have enough people that use more than that, with the exception of kind of those special cases where they're in a highly competitive space, or like that guy who is doing, reputation and penalty recovery and stuff like that. One of the things I've always told you all is to don't stop sending out press releases, and this is another reason why. If you stop using press releases for a client, then within 3 months they're going to lose 30% of their citations, and it will continue to go down, 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 down. And we don't want that. And you'll note that my data says that, Muckrack says that, NP Digital, and then whoever Siger AP is another one of those academic outfits. So that covers kind of the brand search and how you can impact that. And this next stage, this is what's actually really interesting to me. This is the fun stuff, and this is where we figure out, well, how do we get our clients mentioned in these AI answers? Because they're not going to be seen in the map pack if someone's asking in ChatGPT. And we've all heard, hey, AEO is just SEO, and kind of it is mostly SEO, because underlying every single AI answer there is a whole bunch of old school search engine search queries going on. But then there's some AI specific stuff. We're not going to talk about the details of that, but there's ways that you craft your content and things that you can optimize for and stuff like that won't impact how it's that it's surfaced, but it will impact the answer that gets generated from that. So we still have to rank the content. We still have to get that content in that top 10 for these long tail keywords. What happens afterwards, if we craft that content in a very special way, that not necessarily special, but if we take keep some certain things in mind when we're crafting that content, then the AI answer is going to pick up much more of what we want. And again, ranking here, this is really what we're talking about, retrieval and ranking. So we want to drive lots of content through the query fan out into the ranking algorithms. Now, I don't know about you guys, and I know Bradley has talked about this, in a variety of ways. For one of my most common answers with people asking about press releases is like, yeah, they're going to help you with a map pack, but they're not really going to help you too much directly with money keywords. They'll help you rank other stuff for money keywords and things like that. But realistically, most of the money is going to come from the map pack anyway. So, that should really be your focus. And there's good things to be said for ranking in the regular organic algorithm, but we all know those are two different algorithms, right? Well, now we have to, me anyways, I kind of have to eat my words a little bit, because with AI search, that top 10 organic list for the money keywords and all of those query fan out keywords is critically important, because if you are not there, you are not going to show up in the answer. If you are in that top 10, you have a 97.9% chance of showing up in the AI answer for that query. That's almost as close to a guarantee as you're ever going to get in SEO. And so being there with branded content in that top 10 results for those organic searches is completely critical, because like we talked about, your content drives the AI answer. Were you going to jump in there, Bradley?
Yeah, just briefly, because I think you and I had a conversation a couple of weeks about this,
Yep.
weeks ago about this, and I think you misunderstood me. So I want to make sure that the rest of the group is also clear on this.
Absolutely.
And that is, organic search performance does not result in leads when you're talking about Google search for local search queries. Like any type of local search query that pops a maps pack, organic search visibility is not going to produce leads for the client, okay? Because it's pushed so far below the fold now.
Mm-hmm.
But I never said that shouldn't still be prioritized. It's still not important, because that is what influences AI search visibility. So it's still, even though organic search performance in Google search does not produce leads, it's still critically important to get the brand's website cited in AI search results. The cheat or the shortcut is to use third-party brand mentions instead, because they tend to get cited by AI faster than the branded website will, especially for local campaigns. So I just want to make sure that I clarified that.
Yep. Cool. And so here's the stack. We be very, very familiar with this stack, because we have content. We want it ranking in order, so that it will be cited. And once it's cited, we want it to be mentioned, and that's a quality signal. And then when we have enough mentions, then we're controlling the answer. And this is another slide that says the same thing. So let's skip it. Now, what this boils down to is the real prize today is to own this organic search layer. And most local agencies don't even realize that it's even vaguely important right now. So again, this is one of those big important types of things where you have this opportunity to move quickly and start dominating your clients' related search results pages. Obviously brand is important, but we kind of know how to do that today, right? We walked over how that works with press releases already, and parasite content and all that stuff. AI discovery is the real thing. And so let's kind of actually run into this in a little bit more detail so you can kind of visualize this. So old school search, we throw in a keyword, we end up with our 10 blue links, and we pick one and we go. Nowadays, if you the query fan out, you could get upwards of 200 potential places where your content could rank. So if you look at this old school search page, we get one listing in there because our brand, our client brand lands in there one time as 10%, which is not terrible, right? We could certainly throw in some more parasites and stuff like third-party places and get that ranked for those types of keywords and whatnot if we wanted to. But fundamentally, one listing makes a big difference. But then once we drop this into AI and it blows out to 10, 15, 20 sub queries, and I'm using this just to make the math easy, but you roll out to 10 and now all of a sudden you're that one placement, nothing else happened, but now it's an AI tool doing the search instead of a regular search engine. And now your influence on the answer, and I'm going to call this the share of influence, because it's what is your share of the influence on the answer. So share of influence is 1%, right? Obviously arbitrary numbers, used for illustration purposes. Now, let's say we spend some time and we beef up the website and we have other branded content out there, and we can get one listing for each one of these sub keywords, everything that the query fan out is going to go. Now we're back to the 10%. We're back to where we started, right? Which is still going to be better than most of the competition. So we're already going to start getting some good citations and mentions here because we're already doing more. And remember, AI is a math thing. We're talking about probabilities, and the more mentions and citations that we get, or the more citations we get, the more probable it is that we'll get mentions, and the more probable it is that our message will be included because we crafted the content so that all of these reinforce the concepts that we want them to reinforce. And this is very important. We're not going to go into detail on this. I know Bradley's talked about it. I'll talk about it again. But just keep in mind, the more influence we have, the better. So now if we do press releases and we do parasites and we do, some of the stuff that Bradley's talked about with, your subdomain blogs and things like that, where we're now starting to be able to really target, some more of these placements. Now we can get up to like 60%, maybe more, maybe a little bit less, but now we're really starting to dominate the message. And then if we really go ham and we spend a lot of time on it and, we build out, lots of content over the course of a year, say, again, most of this is third-party content, parasites, blog content, all this stuff that isn't on the primary domain. And now all of a sudden, we're able to completely dominate the response, and that answer back is controlled by us. Now, real world, are we ever going to get to this point? Well, it's going to take a lot of effort, but you probably could get pretty darn close. And again, since it's probabilistic, once you get past 60 or 70%, I think you're going to find that, your clients are going to be dominating those answers. Real world, what can this work back to money-wise? Because if we remember, what happens when they find out about the brand is they do a brand search. And so it's hard to track click-throughs from AI, and we don't necessarily see it, but what we do see is the proxy with brand searches a month. So again, using flat numbers for easy math, if we start at 100 searches a month and they're able to get 5 customers out of that for $5,000 a pop, now all of a sudden you start adding in more more footprint. Again, first we rank the client site, we get a little bit of a bump, then we start adding more and we get a little bit more of a bump, and then we really dive into the third party stuff and we get more of a bump, and pretty soon you're starting to make meaningful revenue contribution to your client just by improving the brand search, because again, that's a proxy. The customer found them through AI because of all the other work that you did. They search, they get convinced by the strong brand that you built through all the other means that we've talked about. And then they pick up the phone and they call and they do a deal. And now real world for you, you could charge them $5,000 a month if they're going to get $25,000 a month, and they're going to pay you that every single day. And they will be more than happy to do that. And so this is kind of how this ties back to your business, because of course we are all in the business to, put food on the table, not just to have a good time. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, again, Bradley's talked about it. I've talked about it, kind of in ad hoc sessions. What we're going to do is we're going to put together this, what we're calling the Answer Engine Masterclass. And we're going to, take everything that we know how to do, everything that we, all our different strategies and such, everything that we've learned here. And we're going to teach this across 3 days. How to dominate locally, of course, is something most of you already know how to do, but we're going to cover that a little bit. We're going to talk about building a strong brand that AI can't ignore. And then most of the time is going to be spent in really understanding how to control the AI answers, both through the, how we rank content and where we rank content. And then, of course, even more importantly, how we're crafting that content together in such a way to, kind of force feed our messaging into those AI answers. That's going to be on August, and it'll be a 3-day class, about an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. Now, let's talk about kind of our standard PR playbook. This is kind of fairly, run of the mill. If you've been my customer before, you know this, but we're going to jump over it anyways. This is very similar to what you've learned from Bradley as well. We recommend that you start with what I call the branding stack. Release number 1 introduces the brand. You send it out to premium. I recommend today that you use USA Today and not Yahoo. It's more cost effective from you, and it's a bigger name for your client. They are going to they're going to see USA Today and think sweet. And if you send them a Yahoo Finance link, unless they're in a finance related field, they're going to say, why on earth am I in Yahoo Finance? So we recommend that you use USA Today for this, and no longer really recommend that you use Yahoo for something, for that in particular. You can use both if you want to. It won't hurt anything, but the one that you send your client to show them that, hey, I'm doing something for you, that should be USA Today. And then you have 2 releases after that, one introducing the primary service, one introducing a secondary service. Those arrows are backwards. They should all kind of link back to the previous release in the stack. And this is kind of our branding stack. And we just do this one time, maybe once a year if you really wanted to, but once when you onboard the client, we seem to get best results with that. Then we roll into service stacks, and service stacks are very similar. I'm not going to go into how you build them or anything like that. Bradley teaches this. I teach this on our YouTube channel. Lots of information on how to creatively build these service stacks. I think Bradley, you call them PR stacks. But you're basically going to, I recommend that you do 3 of these. You could do 4 or 2. I don't recommend that you go much beyond 4 unless you're going to increase your volume to like 3 or 4 a month. But at 2 a month, you can safely do 3, and you just kind of rotate through them. I like to kind of cap a stack at 6 releases and then start another one for that same service, maybe with a slightly different angle. Again, the exact logistics of how to build these, go to the YouTube channel, go to the mastermind training that Bradley's done on this stuff. Worst case scenario, hop on a mastermind call, or post in the mastermind group, and Bradley or I'll help you out. Cadence, 2 a month. If it's competitive or you want faster results, go to 4. If you have a really good reason to go above that, go to 6 to 10. Like if you're cleaning up a penalty or problem, we saw that before. Or if you're in a hyper competitive niche, you could do that as well. But even if you're going hardcore, do that for a while and then slowly ramp back down to 2 a month. Because once you kind of get your problem taken care of, you don't need to maintain that cadence. So you can roll back to about 2 a month and you can just maintain there. Now, what have we added? Well, we've got some AI integrations. The most interesting one is the Wire. It is our MCP service that you guys can use in any MCP capable AI tool. And it basically lets you do just about anything that you can do through the AI or UI with the MCP. Of course, we do have an API that a lot of people have integrated, but a lot of people find an MCP easier to use, and so we've got that, and that should be going live here any day. And then we have Downbeat, which is like it's a way to plan out the year when it comes to PRs. And then going along with that is what we call the Stacksmith, which is just a way to create, you feed it the business information that you get through, like some of the prompts that Bradley's given you guys over the, over the last year, as far as, creating, business company briefs and stuff like that. You feed that kind of information in, and out will pop kind of this plan of, hey, here's the branding stack, here's the service stack, and it's perfectly, kind of positioned to feed back into the MCP, back through the API, or if you really wanted to do it, by hand, you could do that as well. So these are our 3 AI related things. All of this will eventually replace our scheduled orders, because those of you who've used scheduled orders know that they are crufty and they are difficult to use, and they break in strange ways at strange times. And so I heartily recommend moving away from scheduled orders. A lot of people have asked for pretty reports, so we have them now. There's a couple of screenshots from some of them. They are unbranded, despite the Press Advantage logo in the background there. That's just because this was a report that we sent out about Press Advantage. It comes up with your client logo. It has the press release in it, has all the kind of fancy logos that your clients will like to see, some domain rating and things like that. We are not putting in, I don't think anymore. I told them not to. I should probably look and make sure, but I don't think we're putting any of the kind of the fake reach numbers that you'll see somewhere, where if you add them all up, then 6 times the population of the planet might see your press release. I don't like those types of numbers. I do include the domain rankings domain rating, because it's a kind of a useful proxy that a lot of people like to look at, even if it's a fake number that Google doesn't care about. We have a new network coming. I had wanted to announce that it was here and ready to go. Unfortunately, it is not. They screwed up a few things, including their canonicalization, and so they're fixing that, and that just kind of takes a while. This new network will have 600 news outlets, and we will also have the opportunity to do non-PR placements on a lot of these. Think editorial content, advertorial content, and things like that. So these are other ways to get non-press release content that you control out there on domains and sites that are trusted and will not overlap with your with your PRs, and they just surface differently, and you have freer reign over what the content actually says. So I'm pretty excited about this. These are a lot of kind of old school logo sites, TV stations, radio stations, small town newspapers that, we carried back in the day, and they kind of all went away. And now they're back with a vengeance. And those of you who are currently customers, we are test publishing the Authority Network to this. And so you might have seen a big bump in your release count, and that's coming from these guys. Finally, we have some capability now where if you wanted to have your own news network, you can do that. You can just bring your domains, and we can help you with the hosting for that, and we can help you with the content for that, and you can publish your own press releases. You could be topical, kind of however you want to do it, you can do it. We will also have some topical kind of owned and operated networks that we run that you guys will be able to opt into. I will never charge you for these because they are not kind of attached to major media, to real media brands out there, right? These are, news sites that we own, that we operate. And so they will be 100% opt-in. You can choose to distribute to them, or you can choose not to. It's 100% up to you. But, suffice it to say that these will be an opportunity for you if you would like to use them. And so let's just bump into the offer here real quick, and then we can answer any questions that may have accumulated. Those of you who were with me last year, this is the same offer that we ran last year. I'm going to kind of gloss over that. So what we're going to do today for the very last time is we're going to have another unlimited package. And what this is you get dedicated access to a single slot in our fulfillment queue. And you can do the math and figure you get about 20 press releases a month through there. And, the reason why we're going away from this is because, as you saw earlier in a slide, we've got all of this other distribution that's no longer just press releases. And so we're going away from selling just press releases, and our offer is going to shift, and it's become a lot more white label, done for you, as opposed to kind of the done with you angle that we have today. And so these unlimited packages, they just don't fit into that model anymore. And so we're not going to offer them anymore. So this is, this here is the last time that we're going to offer this, kind of this webinar package that we're doing. We're also going to throw in, I am kind of copying what Bradley does because I think it's a great idea, where he's a little crazier than I am because he does this stuff twice a week. I'm thinking maybe twice a month at tops, but I'm going to have kind of this live access to me, office hours. We can talk about PRs and anything, but really we could talk about anything you want. I know a lot about a lot of stuff, and I'm happy to talk about pretty much anything. And even if I don't know about it, I'm probably happy to talk about it too. And I may ask you a bunch of questions to learn more. But anybody who is a customer will have free access to this. It'll probably be in like a school group or circle or something like that. I will also be sharing all the AI skills and workflows and stuff like that I build for my own use. And anything that's built from one of my companies that I can share, I will share here. You may or may not ever hit the public, but the folks in my mastermind will have that. And frankly speaking, you don't have to be a customer for this. I will, just because the Semantic Mastery folks have been so good to me, any of their mastermind folks can have free access to mine too. You'll get priority access to anything I do. But anybody who's not a customer of myself or Semantic Mastery will have to pay, because I don't want people just to walk in the door and have access to stuff. As far as bonuses that we'll throw in today, they're different from last year. Obviously, you get the AI automation suite that we talked about. Some of those case studies that we alluded to at the beginning, as well as a bunch of other ones that my marketing team has been aggressively going out and getting. We're going to write these up in ways that can be used in your sales processes, in your marketing, and we'll really be able to let you kind of piggyback on some of the results that people get with press releases and use that to sell press releases to your clients. Similarly, we're going to take a lot of the information that you've seen here today, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff that is in our unpublished study, which will be published here in the next month or so. And we're going to give you good, solid sales handouts, stuff that you can use in your sales processes to pitch press releases, to pitch AI visibility, all of the stuff, the educational stuff that I talked about that's really important for your clients to understand. We're going to give you handouts so that you could just use those or adapt them or whatever. Obviously, you're going to get a free seat to the Answer Engine Masterclass. And, we just talked about the mastermind. I think most of you understand what you get with Press Advantage, but all of the press releases include writing. They get distributed within minutes to our industry-leading wire services. Our authority package today, which is a little bit higher than the one that's on the offer, but there's an upsell to get to it. It distributes to 850 news outlets today, which is a pretty big number, and that does not include obviously the 600 new outlets that we're adding. We do pay extra to have those those placements be permanent. Some of you who have used other services may have noticed that your press releases go away within the first couple months, and that does not happen here because we pay extra money, and we've built great relationships with our upstream providers to not purge any of that content. You get unlimited media rooms. You have full rich media embed. We can do images and videos, JSON schema, iframes, whole 9 yards. The set and forget automation is a little dated now. That's going to be replaced by the AI stuff that I just mentioned. And the live placement reports come in 2 different ways. You can, the dashboard will always have up-to-date information. You can download it from a CSV. You can get it through the API. You can get it through the MCP, or you can download the nice, pretty report that will always be up to date with whatever it is that we know. And the price for that is $9.97 a month. That if you were to pay full retail for that, it's over $4,300 a month. Pretty significant discount, obviously. The Unlimited Foundation is our foundation package, which is kind of our standard legacy, and then it adds part of what we normally put into authority, and that adds 230 US newspapers to that. It's going to move the needle for you. It's not quite as good as the authority package, but you can upgrade to the authority package, and but you're still going to get some fantastic results. A lot of the results that we've talked about have come from this package as well. So never fear, you're going to get amazing results with that. Now, a little bit more detail on the unlimited plan, because people hear unlimited and they think I'm going to send out 1 million press releases, and that's not going to happen. What you get is you get 1 slot in our fulfillment queue. We have offered some form of the unlimited plan for 10 years now, something like that. And the issue that we ran into several years ago was there's just too much abuse going on, so we just shut it all down. And I think there was like 2 years where I didn't offer it, and then I had enough people asking me that I got to figure out how to do this. But couldn't have the resellers coming in, all the people that would queue up 30 press releases and bog down our fulfillment queue, so everyone else's press releases got delayed by 3 weeks and stuff like that. It was just a nightmare, right? And so what we did is we re-engineered our fulfillment queue to add the ability to reserve places in that line, essentially. And so if you have an unlimited plan, you have 1 place that is reserved for you. No one else can use them. You can have 1 release active at any given time. You queue them up, as many as you can, have at least 5 or 6 of them in there, because as soon as one ships and goes out the door onto the wire, then we're going to grab the next one and we're going to start working on it. Of course, if you have an urgent release that needs to go out, you can expedite. It costs a little fee to do that. You can reorder, remove them, anything like that. If you need more throughput, you can buy additional slots. Not a problem. And of course, these are still limited to agencies. We cannot resell these. This is not for you to go and start a competing PR company or resell on Fiverr or something like that. So real world, you're going to get about 20 to 24 of these through per month. We see a little bit more, we see a little bit less, but I'm going to tell you conservatively, do your math at 20 press releases a month. We've been using this style for about 3 years now, and that's consistently what we're seeing. A good rule of thumb is 1 per business day, and you get kind of pretty close. What that means is if you're sending out 2 press releases a month for each client, that turns into $83 per client per month, which is a pretty darn good deal. If you were to sell that to them at $500 a month, after 2 clients, you're going to get you're going to break even, and you can generate literally thousands of dollars in profit, all by just kind of upselling your clients on this stuff. And there is the link right there, pressadvantage.com/SMUnlimited. Let's answer questions. You're muted, Bradley. Still muted. You're still muted, Bradley.
Oh, I thought that was Alex that was muted. Forgive me.
No, you were muted.
I was saying, Alex, since we're on a meeting, you can ask your question on in the meeting instead of via chat like I just told you to do. And then it was me that was muted. So
Yeah.
Alex, if you got any questions, feel free, man.
Yeah, man. So I currently have the Authority package. I get 4 releases for $1,000 basically. I'd like to switch over. So
I bet you would. It's a good deal.
how should I do that through your support, or what should I do?
Email support, they'll hook you up. Yep.
Sweet. Awesome. Doing it right now.
Yeah, Jeremy and I just chatted last week because I was on a 20 a month plan, but I was publishing an average of what, 60
a lot
or
more
65
than that. Yeah,
per month.
60 a month. Yeah.
And so we just changed my subscription to 50 a month. So that's going to hurt all at once when I get it with that invoice. But I was stretching it out over the month anyway. So what difference does it make, So
yeah. Just put it on a card.
Yeah, he says, All Action says, I do some rank and rent. Do we have to run a real address to run press releases? No.
You need a city and state. That's it.
That's right. Yeah, and I mean, it certainly helps if you have for rank and rent stuff. The problem that I see with rank and rent stuff right now, guys, is it's harder to establish it as a brand because there's not the validation signals that a real business has. And, the days of us going out and putting up a fake business name and creating GBPs and all that kind of stuff are pretty much gone. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's an enormous amount of work. And remember, AI, LLMs can fact check in real time. And so validation is incredibly important. And so having the appropriate type of signals, including like, for example, business licenses, insurance, corporate documents, like at the state level and at the federal level, all of those things matter. And on rank and rent stuff, it's very difficult to achieve those or to produce those types of, validation signals. And so, I think it's getting a lot harder. Yes, press releases can help to a degree, but without those validation signals, I think you're always going to be at a disadvantage.
Yep, for sure.
So. Can we run by houses type of press releases? Yes, we do that.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a good question, actually, though. What are some of the kind of restrictions that we have or that are very limited for Press Advantage?
Yeah. So we have, a guidelines page on our website that talks a little bit about this, but, obviously, stuff like adult and gambling is hard. There's ways around it with gambling that we can't really get around as far as adult goes. Loans can be a little touchy depending on the topic. So like title loans tends to be kind of a hard no. But on the flip side, if you're doing like hard money lending or something like that, we can get those out the door. A lot of times we have ways to get around some of the guidelines because the guidelines are specific to a type of release. And so we can always reach out to support and say, hey, I've got this client and they want to do this. Is that something we can do press releases for? Yeah.
Yeah. And then some of the other, standard ones that are a bit tricky, like cannabis and some medical things are very difficult to do. So you just, a lot of the stuff that are sensitive topics or that are very highly regulated topics, they're going to be a lot more difficult to publish regularly. So.
And you're kind of going to know if any of your clients are in that space. You're already going to know which ones have, compliance issues and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. And if you happen to submit one that gets flagged, you'll get a notification. And it'll let you go in and revise it and that kind of stuff. So, cool. So, any other questions, guys? Let me check on YouTube comments because we got it in 2 places. Let's see. Brian says, "How do you provide a client for $500 per month? One PR in consulting or?" That's the question.
Oh, so that goes to the math I was talking about earlier. So, Brian, The idea being is that you have, I mean, you can certainly use press releases as a lead generation mechanism or as a way to kind of sign up a new client. But I'm talking much more along the lines of, upselling existing clients into additional services by adding, layering in press releases and explaining to them why that's important. And $500 for 2 press releases is an insane value for a client. Like to the point where I know people that are out there paying $1,500-$1,600 a month for a press release that's just like my authority press releases, and and they happily pay that. So $500 a month is actually, I mean, that's actually probably a little bit low for 2 press releases, but it's an easy way to kind of get in the door with that. And if your cost for that is $85 and you're selling it for $500, I mean, you do the math. It's you do pretty good.
I mean, if you just go look at PR Web's pricing, they're very, very high, and they start at 120 for basic, which is basically a shitty distribution.
It's nothing will show up. Yeah,
it's terrible. And they go all the way up to premium for $480 a month, or $480 for one press release. And so press release can be stupid expensive. Doing them at higher volume will keep the price down so that you can have a margin, and that's the whole point. So well, a margin and getting the client results. Those are kind of the two intended outcomes, right?
You'll lose your margin awfully quick if you're not getting them results. So
well, and most of you probably know, I mean, I've been press release have been a staple of my SEO strategy since 2014 when I came across Press Advantage, and never stopped. It's been 12 years, and the way that they have been important has changed and evolved over time. How they influence search performance has evolved, but they've always been a staple of my kind of strategy. And more recently, anybody that uses my link building services at Semantic Links would know I've been stressing very heavily that press releases are, one of the things that we like any sort of citation building, both structured and unstructured, and press releases falls into that category, right? So a structured citation is going to be like a traditional business directory listing. It's very structured, name, address, phone number, with or without the website, doesn't matter. Those are still structured citations, but unstructured citations are brand references with at least 2 out of those 4 data points: name and address, name and phone, name and website. But one of those combinations published elsewhere on the web, that's an unstructured citation. Press releases are fabulous for that because they're not only is it a high volume, but it's also on high authority news and media style sites, which has that freshness factors that LLMs love. And that's part of the reason why press releases get cited in AI search results so often. And that's what I said for third party, like for local business, kind of brand influencing, right? Like to build the brand up. One of the by far, I think the best way to do that is through press releases, just citation building, period. But press release is a big part of that. So another one came in for Brian from Brian, excuse me, in YouTube. He says, "What is the half-life of a PR today in the AI info spam world?"
We haven't found it yet. We've been pushing these newer kind of AI focused press releases for 2 years now, and they're still sticking around. As far as just a general half-life, I mean, I can go back to 2013 and find some of the earliest press releases that we've put out there that are still in the wire. Obviously, there's a lot of decay that happens in 13, 14 years. But when it comes to AI, we're still, all the stuff that we started sending out at the very beginning is still out there. I'm still getting referenced. Again, remembering that a lot of this is being referenced through Google as well. And so, as long as we're, kind of happy with what Google sees and that stuff stays up, then most of the AI tooling is going to see it as well. But, the problem that you run into is you lose the freshness, and freshness applies kind of across the board. So it's a brand level type of signal, and again, we have to remember that the AI angle comes in after the search angle. So freshness is a big factor for search, and so if we start losing that freshness, then it goes away. I see this weird thing going on with higher volume press release usage and consistent press release usage, where not only does the high end stuff show up, but also kind of the low end filler content will start getting, getting added to the primary index. And, even stuff like financial content, which is, that was, gold standard back in 2013, right? That is no longer gold standard. It's kind of been spammed to death, but we will see financial content and other kind of this basic placement showing up in the primary search index because of all of the brand volume of high profile outlets that are publishing that content. So there's this, this drag along effect that's pulling lower impact stuff back into the primary index, to the point where sometimes with some brands, if, in sufficient volume, we will see, like some random, landscaping company has a latest news about such and such landscaper right underneath their website on a Google search page where it's showing 4 or 5 press releases, and which is just crazy. If you think about, that kind of search feature. So the volume matters, but, above all, just kind of keep doing it because that freshness and signal drags everything else along with it.
Well, let me add to that then, because I want to clarify something. I think there's still a lot of misconceptions about why press releases are so valuable. I know you covered it quite thoroughly today, but stop using press releases as a link building tool, okay? Because that's not what they're for, right? Yes, you can put links in press releases, but it's more about the associations, the brand associations. Guys, our jobs as SEOs now is not pushing link equity. It's not building links. It's not pushing DR or DA. What our job is strengthening the associations between the brand, the products or services it provides, and the locations or the area in which it provides them. And that's why press releases are so powerful, because if you're putting a brand anchor, now, if you're going to contain a link to the website, the main, money website, right? So the brand's domain, okay? Then you want a brand anchor, or what I call a compound anchor, which is a brand plus type of an anchor, which is a brand plus a product or service term, or brand plus a location or area term, or brand plus all of the above, right? A location or product or service plus a location or area. The point that I'm trying to make is it doesn't even have to be in the anchor text, as long as the brand is being referenced in relevant context that is in close proximity to relevant entities, right? Again, product, services, locations, areas, etc. And so that's what matters, is it's the citation, not the link, that you should be focused on. And so that's why when we talk about how to publish press releases and how to build press release stacks, it's not about the links from the press release that matter so much as the brand references. And so you don't want to just keep hammering your website with press release links, because there's diminishing value to that. Because Google starts to see links coming from the same set of referring domains or source domains, and it will start to ignore subsequent links. And so that's why it's important to understand the press release stack strategy, which is to use, I prefer using a premium press release at the top of a stack, which may contain one link, a brand or a brand plus type of an anchor, to a corresponding page on the main website. But then all of your subsequent releases in the stack have brand references, but always link up to the top of the top of stack release. So that way you're pushing more relevance to the top release that might have an actual link to the money site. But in either case, whether there's a link in the top of stack release or not, it's always creating and reinforcing or strengthening those brand associations. And that is what makes press releases valuable today. It's not the links, guys.
And you can have a press release show up in search with no links in it whatsoever. The links don't matter for visibility. 100%. And, ultimately the visibility today is what's driving just about everything. And, it's easy to kind of fall back into old habits with, link building and link equity and all these things that we used to care about a lot, and forget that, today visibility and branding is, it's lower than table stakes. It's like the foundation that the table sits on. So
Kyle was asking if if since he's only got one client right now, it doesn't make sense for him to have a subscription. And he's like, is it still appropriate to purchase one-off releases from Semantic Links? And I'm telling him yes. I do have a real reseller agreement with Jeremy, so I do resell releases. So that's always an option. But I always even tell my agency clients at Semantic Links, like, if you're going to be publishing press releases for clients regularly, which you should be, then you're better off getting your own subscription. And I mean that because I want you guys to get better results and also to retain more margin. I do have a slight margin on my releases, so there is a bit of a markup, or else I wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? So It does make sense if you're going to be publishing press releases for, if you don't have enough to cover enough client money to cover a subscription, then don't do it yet. But go out and get some more clients then. You know, that should be your priority.
But also remember, one of the case studies that I showed at the very beginning was a marketing agency that, and this was, I know who that was, and it was literally some of their very first press releases that they sent out with our service when they signed up, because most agencies, they'll test the waters a little bit first. And it was those early press releases that drove, you know, just this massive spike in revenue for them. And so don't sleep on, you know, hey, I'm going to take this investment a little bit proactively, and I'm going to go, and maybe I only, use, 4 press releases a month, 5 press releases a month. And I'm going to use most of them for my clients. And I might use 1 or 2 of them for lead generation or to kind of, show somebody what I can do. But if you remember what Alex said at the very beginning, he was paying me, $1,000 a month for 4 on a full retail package. So, I know it's a lot of money. And if you don't have the money, then don't spend it. But, there is an element of, hey, I can kind of take the leap and use it on my agency, and then, use it kind of prospectively to, to help, build extra business and do outreach and stuff like that. So, it is a common thing that I see using. But obviously you can buy one-offs from Bradley. You can get in the door with me for, fewer press releases a month if you needed to. But, I don't play, and I don't know that we really talked about this, but I don't play the internet marketing game when the offer's gone. It is gone, and I don't reset the clock every time you refresh the browser page or something like that we've all seen on those landing pages. So,
All Action says, what is the benefit of schema and press releases?
Well, schema goes out on the wire on press release. And so anywhere that you would use schema, it just kind of helps tie everything back together, right? That's one of the reasons why we use schema, is it helps tie pieces of content back with the core entities. And as long as you've got your ID page set correctly and your same as set correctly, and kind of all the basics of schema that you've learned from Bradley and in the mastermind, you don't have to do the hardcore schema that I mean, we know a couple of the names out there that where those guys are schema wizards, but I look at that stuff and I think, boy, let's just 80-20 this and get the the best bang for buck and move on with our life, because we're not in such competitive spaces. But it helps to put out the schema. I have seen a few press releases with schema attached completely disambiguate a brand within days, and it's just a valuable thing to do, and it's kind of one of those best practices types of things.
Yeah, and to be clear, for my own clients, when we do press releases, I typically don't add release specific schema.
No.
Just because it's a volume thing, that it's hard to scale if you're doing that at high volume. So I just stick
and
with,
you don't have to,
yeah.
Just the regular schema in the organization, attached to the client brand. Just do it the one time. It'll automatically attach to all press releases. The release specific schema, that's just a corner case that some people like to use for very specific reasons. But I always tell people, unless you know exactly why you want to do that, you don't.
Yeah. And so to clarify, guys, if you on the organization page, which is the media room for the brand or for a branded location, because remember, a brand can have multiple locations. Each location should have its own media room or organization page. Yep. But there is where you can add like local business or the appropriate subtype or organization schema or an array, which would include both organization plus the local business subtype. And that's critically important to add there. However, the cheat code is if you've got really good schema already embedded on the money site and you embed the money site page into the organization page, it's going to pull that schema in through that iframe anyway, right? So it's just kind of a shortcut to make it easier on you. Now, if your website's not embeddable or your client's website's not embeddable, which happens often, then you have to add the schema individually to the organization page. So
yeah, where that does not help is the very few of our partners will take the iframe embed. They almost all take the schema embed, and so you're going to get the schema showing up on the press release page on USA Today and azcentral.com and some of these distribution outlets, which you're going to be able to kind of leech some of their authority.
Yeah. All right, another one from Brian on YouTube. He says, what study is available to prove what PRs will do for a client GBP ranking? Is that some of the stuff that you have in your new white label collateral, marketing collateral?
Yeah, so we'll have collateral to go along with it. We've got, we're putting together a comprehensive research report that covers all of the research that we did this year. But other than that, you can look at the, I'm sure we'll send the deck out so you guys can see the deck, so you can kind of refer back to that.
Okay. Our press release is good for affiliate sites too.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can promote anything really. I mean,
anything. Yeah,
that's
as long as it's within guidelines. I got plenty of affiliates.
Brand associations. That's the most important thing right now. Period. So, Justin says, do you recommend we build a lot of links to the press release URLs?
Please don't.
Yeah, we build links
to do it through a buffer site or something like that.
We build links to press releases, but they're from very relevant sources, because that's the whole nature of semantic links, is we do relevance matching. And so that's important. If you're talking about like throwing kitchen sink spam at press releases, I don't recommend that. I don't recommend doing that to any branded property, period. Like, swear to God, the only time I think it's okay, my methodology is to use relevant links, guys, because you don't want to pollute your brand or its assets, its associated assets, with generic or shitty links. In my opinion, those days are gone, and it can actually do more harm than good. The only time I think it's relevant or still appropriate to do so is for like indexing citations, business directories that are having a hard time getting indexed. You want to throw a GSA spam gig at a batch of citation URLs? Fine, do that to your heart's content. But I don't recommend you spamming any sort of branded assets. And press releases, I consider those as branded assets, or at least, brand references. So again, I don't like to do that. But if you're going to build links to press releases, the kind of, if you're trying to rank an individual release for something, it makes sense to build links to that, but do it from proper relevant sources that strengthen those associations again. Okay. If you're trying to just power up all of the press releases for a given brand or branded location, then the Press Advantage media room or organization page becomes kind of the perfect link target for that, because it basically acts as like a blog roll page or an index page, right? An archive page where all of the press releases published for that brand are referenced. And so it's like one centralized source that you can push relevant link equity into, that's going to help to kind of power up all of the other releases too. So, and
just to kind of add on to that, from maybe a bit of a meta perspective, many of you know that before Press Advantage, we had another link building automation service, and we built literally billions of backlinks over the years. And so I do know links, and I know how to use them: white hat, gray hat, black hat, any color hat, rainbow, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? And so I know a lot about building links. If you're ever building large volumes of links, always funnel them through, I like to call it a circuit breaker or a buffer site or something like that, that you can easily disconnect from the rest of your collateral. Because if you do something silly, like some vendor screws up the anchor text, that you can very easily, with a GSA blast or two, you can very easily tell Google that your phishing website is now about cave diving or something like that. And it's hard to get that. It's almost impossible to recover from that unless you can disconnect those links. And so anytime you're doing any kind of volume link building, whether it's through GSA or like Neo or any of these tools that are out there, that certainly most tools have their place, but always funnel that through some sort of circuit breaker or buffer page or something like that, that you can very easily disconnect chunks of your upstream link building structure from the money site, from the branded site. Because again, to Bradley's point, anything that is branded, you should be considering that to be a money site, because today it is your social platform, your GBP, your Press Advantage page, what are all these, like a Substack, or, kind of any of these other pages,
branded
anything that
Web2.
has your brand attached
Yeah.
to it, that is a money page now. And you have to be very careful about how you treat it, because you can very easily change. And it's not just, I'm going to flip flop a website. You can flip flop an entire brand and build brand associations to completely different, different industries and different topics, and in a way that is very, very hard to recover. So be very, very careful anytime you do any kind of link building, that you funnel it through, an appropriate structure, and that should about cover it.
So Brian is asking, I guess, follow up. I want to know more about PRs helping GBP ranking. What can you share now? Well, the whole presentation, Brian, was about precisely that. Again, brand associations and citations, both structured and unstructured. That is primarily what helps GBPs to rank, but also influences AI search visibility. So we've already covered that today, but one more time, just to kind of repeat that for the group. Right now, the two things that you should be focusing on in local search is GBP performance and AI search visibility. I'm not saying you, because here's why, because organic search performance in Google search is not going to produce leads, but it's important if you want to ultimately get the client's website to be cited in AI search results. The quickest way to influence AI search performance right now, or visibility, right, to increase AI search visibility, is through third-party mentions. But that also has a direct influence on Google business profile ranking performance, because a structured or unstructured citation acts as a citation, which is a validation signal to the GBPs. Remember, those are off-page signals. GBPs are heavily reliant, the performance of a GBP now is heavily influenced or reliant upon activity and engagement signals too. What do I mean? Okay, so on-page optimization is like the bottom line, like the starting point, the floor, so to speak. You should have a GBP profile should be optimized fully with accurate information with a complete profile. Okay, that's number one. But then activity and engagement signals, well, there's all the off-page stuff, citations, links, etc., brand references, all of those things that we've just discussed today. But then there's activity and engagement. Activity are signals that we or the business owner can influence. Publishing photos or uploading photos, publishing Google business posts, responding to reviews, those types of things, right? Either the business or we on their behalf can influence activity signals. Engagement signals are user-generated signals. So that's going to be like customers leaving reviews, customers clicking driving directions, or just kind of engaging with the GBP, those types of things. Those are a lot harder to spam. That's why there's more weight put on them. You understand? Because activity engagement signals are usually the last thing that people would try to influence, because you typically try to influence on page and off page because that's easier to do, right? It's harder to influence activity and engagement signals, and that's why those are weighted heavier now in GBP performance. So on page optimization, proper links from relevant sources, citations, those are the three things that we can influence the most as SEOs. Activity signals, we can help the business owner influence those. Engagement signals are going to be consumer generated signals. Hopefully that's clear. All right. I don't see any other questions except one more from All Action about herbal alternative medicine practitioners, ?
Yep. Just can't make claims. As with any kind of supplementy type of thing, or anything related to medical, we can't make any claims. But we have quite a few customers who are working in kind of that alternative medicine, functional medicine, kind of some of those clinic spaces, and you can absolutely do that.
You got a number.
Again, just with anything medical, you have to stay away from anything related to claims.
Yeah. Right on. So I think we're good. Jeremy, I don't see any other questions coming in. So I think we can
Well, if
wrap it
anyone
up.
has any follow-up questions, support@pressadvantage.com is a great place. You can also get into the Semantic Mastery circle group, and you can tag me there and ask me questions there. I'm a little bit slower to answer there because I'm the one doing the answering there as opposed to support. I have a team who answers all of the support emails and pulls me in when they need me. So do have a little bit of patience. If you have questions about the offer or how it works or anything like that, and you're interested, you're just not ready to commit yet, just reach out and we'll talk about it, as long as you reach out to me before the offer closes. And the offer will close at the end of the day on Friday. And when it's closed, it's closed.
That's it. We'll get it while it's good. So thanks everybody for being here, Jeremy. I appreciate your time as always, man. And I'll see you later this week.
Thanks everyone.
Everybody.